In his poet reflection, Einstein's Dreams, the physicist Alan Lightman writes that we live between two distinct modes of time. Mechanical time, the ticking of the clock, the daily and weekly schedule, the relentless march of deadlines, and body time, the natural, rhythmic, internal pace of human life. There is an outside time and an inside time, as in the time for all ages. Where the two meet, Lightman says, we often feel desperation, but where they go their separate ways, we discover contentment. In our culture, mechanical time almost always wins. We live in an era defined by high speed, endless metrics, and the constant notifications. We are taught that to be valuable is to be productive, to be faithful is to be busy, and to solve the massive, staggering problems of our world come from climate change to racial injustice, we must strain every intellectual muscle we can until we crack. And yet, when we look back at our greatest breakthroughs, our most profound discoveries rarely come from forced exertion. They surfaced when the conscious mind finally stepped aside. Auguste Clecquot unlocked the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake biting his own tail, and Dmitri Mendeleev organized the entire periodic table only after falling asleep at his desk and waking up to find the elements neatly arranged in a dream. Even Elias Howe solved the key design of the lock-stitch sewing machine, putting the eye at the tip of the needle thanks to a nightmare about warriors carrying spears with holes through their blades. These and countless other innovations did not arrive by gripping the steering wheel tighter. They emerged from the deep sanctuary of night, where dreaming allowed the brain to connect what logic could not. Today I want to ask a simple, fundamental question. What is the importance of dreams? And this is our first answer. Dreams can sometimes tap into the imagination of our minds that gripping tightly to our waking mind cannot. However, it is not just our literal dreams while sleeping, but our daydreams, our liminal dreams, our visions that have deep imaginative capacity, which can allow us to picture a world that does not yet exist. For generations, Western philosophy tried to draw a hard, impenetrable line between our waking life and our dreaming life. Waking life was considered the realm of real logic, truth, and reason. Dreaming was dismissed as mere noise, an accidental side effect of a sleeping brain. In his classic text, Dreams, the French philosopher Henri Bergson challenged this false divide. Bergson was a Nobel laureate known for his work on consciousness and intuition, and Durie, the concept that real time is a continuous qualitative human experience rather than a series of measurable ticks on a clock. In April 1922, he engaged in a landmark debate with Albert Einstein in Paris, arguing that physics, mathematical definition of time, ignored the subjective lived reality of human temporal experience. Though Einstein's scientific view ultimately prevailed in physics, their confrontation remains one of the defining historical clashes between scientific rationalism and continental philosophy. In his book on dreams, Bergson argued that dreaming is not an absence of mind, but a different way of perceiving reality. In waking life, our intellect acts as a filter. It narrows our focus so we can survive, navigate traffic, and pay our bills. It cuts away the vast majority of perceptions to keep us efficient. When we dream, Bergson noted, that the strict filter drops. The mind expands back into its natural state of broad, fluid intuition. In a groundbreaking 2026 framework titled An Interdisciplinary Framework, Dreams, Narrative, and Liminal Cognition, cognitive researchers Marco Bernini and Ben Anderson push this idea even further. They describe the human mind not as a sealed box, but as inherently porous. Bernini and Anderson ask what actually moves back and forth across the threshold between waking and dreaming. Modern cognitive science is revealing that our minds bleed continuously into the world around us, and the world bleeds back into our minds. The conversation we have on the streets of Falmouth, the ocean air we breathe, the griefs we hold, and the justice we long for, they all do not stop at the edge of sleep. They leak across the threshold into our night dreams. And conversely, the symbolic, creative, uninhibited wisdom of our dreams leaks back into how we walk through the world every morning. In other words, if our brains are permeable, we do not live in two separate worlds, one real and one that is at times connected to the collective unconscious. We live in an ongoing dynamic dialogue between what is and what could be. When we look at the life of Albert Einstein, we see this cognitive porosity in its purest form. Einstein was not merely a master of complex equations. He was, at his core, a master daydreamer. At 16 years old, while sitting in a Swiss school that encouraged visual imagination over rote memorization, Einstein didn't solve physics by grinding through his textbooks. He allowed his mind to float. He pictured himself riding alongside a beam of light. He imagined lightning bolts striking train tracks, visualizing moving observers and shifting horizons. That single daydream, that willingness to hold a visual thought experiment in his mind until his palms sweated with psychic tension, shattered centuries of classical physics and gave birth to the theory of relativity. He had to step outside the mechanical time of the classroom to discover the deeper truths of the universe. And isn't the importance of dreams precisely what Emily Dickinson is whispering to us in her poetry? We dream. It is good we are dreaming. It would hurt us were we awake. Dickinson was not advocating for an empty escapism. She was reminding us that the human soul needs a staging ground, a drama, where we can rehearse reality before we are forced to confront it in solid stone. Dreaming is the safe container where we test impossible ideas, process our grief, and build the spiritual stamina necessary to face a heavy world. I can think of countless times in my own life when a dream helped prepare me for an eventuality my waking mind was not ready to experience. For example, when I was teaching, I had a repeated dream that I moved into a school where I was stabbed countless times. I had this dream so often I was no longer fearful of being hurt and was able to work in places where my fears might have prohibited me before. When I was living in San Francisco, I had a repeated dream about a large, sprawling parsonage where I had to sleep in a clawfoot bathtub because too many people were in the house. When I saw the parsonage in Dedham, I knew that was the parsonage I dreamed of. It had been a long time since I remembered my dreams like that. However, there are other types of dreaming that are useful for the imaginative process. To daydream, to engage in creative visualization, is not an act of laziness. It is a spiritual discipline. It is the act of opening the window of a cramped mind to let fresh air blow through. When we bring this understanding into life of our religious community, here at UU Falmouth, the implications could be profound. What is a faith community if not a sacred space dedicated to collective dreaming? In our individual lives, we are so easily crushed by mechanical time and immediate demands. We look at the news, we see the political fractures, the environmental crisis, and the stubborn persistence of human cruelty, and our conscious minds default to worry. Isn't worry simply a negative daydream? It is using our brilliant, porous imagination to repeatedly rehearse the worst possible outcome, draining our spirits and paralyzing our muscles before we begin. I would like to believe our UU community is the antidote to worry paralysis. Here we light a chalice and step into a space of shared visioning. We refuse to accept that the world as it currently exists is the only world that is possible. Just as Einstein reimagined time and space by daring to ride a beam of light, we are called to reimagine our community by daring to dream big. To dream of a society where no child goes hungry and no elder is isolated. To dream of a sanctuary that serves as an incubator for social justice, environmental stewardship, and radical hospitality on this peninsula. To dream of a faith so bold that it acts as a genuine catalyst for love in a fractured world. A collective of us did this last week when Indivisible Falmouth invited me to speak at the vigil to recognize the losses of the deaths by the hands of ICE agents in Maine and Texas, and Fred generously planned to let the choir out early to be present. All day I'd been thinking, thought experimenting, really, and daydreaming about what I might say or do to bring comfort to those present at the vigil. And the words I came up with led to the hymn, "We'll Build a Land." The thought of singing that all by myself with no accompaniment made me nervous. But when Fred told me the choir was coming, I mentioned I was ending with that song, and Fred offered to have the choir sing with me, which was a relief to me and a serendipitous, perfect ending to the vigil. I refuse to believe visions that lead to a collective action are pure fantasies of my own imagination, because our minds are porous. The dreams we hold together in this sanctuary and outside are commingled with others. They inform how we vote, how we volunteer, how we speak to our neighbors, and how we care for this fragile ecosystem of Cape Cod. Our dreams physically shape our reality. My friends, we live in a world that desperately needs our bold and positive, courageous dreams. If you're feeling exhausted today, if you've been straining at the problems of your life or the problems of the world until your head aches, I invite you to stop squeezing your brain. Give yourself permission to step out of mechanical time and into outside time. Allow your mind to be porous. Trust the quiet wisdom that operates just beneath the surface of your conscious thoughts. Rest, daydream. Let us listen to the subtle whispers that only come when the noise of the world falls quiet.